Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're back for part 2 of Friday Morning GM, an extended Friday Morning GM this week because of the coaching search and the Bisciotti. The first part was largely about the Bisciotti-DaCosta press conference. Voss, what were the key takeaways from that for you? Maybe something you want to highlight from our first discussion.
Yeah, I think it was just that the Ravens are very good hands with Steve Bisciotti. Yeah. I believe so. And Eric DaCosta and Ozzie Newsome. It's an institution. And I think the underlying message from DaCosta was that John Harbaugh didn't make the Ravens. The Ravens more made John Harbaugh. And they're going to continue to excel in the future.
All right. I came out with one question, and I've said my piece, and I know we have some disagreements in that first episode that are worth listening to, by the way, folks. But one question I have is, it really appears now with the Harbaugh hiring by the Giants that a lot of the coaching staff is going to be gutted. I would expect him to get every coach that he wants. I don't necessarily think he'll want Zach Orr as a defensive coordinator, but maybe he wants him back as a linebackers coach. And I don't know about Chris Horton, but he may want him as a special teams coach. And Pagano probably retires or he goes with Harbaugh. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but I am expecting basically a complete overhaul of the Ravens coaches, which leads me to one more question. But let me first of all, do you agree with that?
I do. I think there'll be a handful of coaches brought back at most. It's a big operation. Strength and conditioning falls under coaches. This is a lot of positions to fill. The kicking, Randy Brown. Apparently, Randy Brown. Well, he was at the press conference. Apparently, sitting in the front row with Ozzie. So I took that as a sign that he maybe. And reportedly, most of the Ravens assistant coaches are under 2-year contracts, so you can't take a lateral move without permission.
Oh, okay, all right, for a lateral move. And I don't know what it would take to get Randy Brown a level higher, and I don't know when his contract ends. I do know when some of the contracts end, by the way, but I don't know in Randy's case. But Randy is from New Jersey and has been mayor of a town in central New Jersey. It would just make all kinds of sense for him to go with Harbaugh. So I'll be surprised. Randy's very valuable to the Ravens, by the way. It extends further than that. Some of their analytics people, I'm concerned about them leaving. Daniel Stern is the head of football strategy. I'm concerned about him moving on. Lots of guys.
If I, in an ideal world, I do think a good bit of fresh blood on the coaching staff is good. Wash away that taste of panicking under pressure and blowing leads and under and that sort of thing. But if you can keep the strength and conditioning coach with the players now, gave them high marks in the analytics, as many as possible in my view.
Yeah. So you've got that. But here's the big question that's overarching to the fact that all these coaches are leaving is the Ravens have been extremely successful, particularly building the offense around Lamar Jackson. Who keeps the Ravens' DNA on offense the same as it used to be? Okay, whoever it is going to have a different viewpoint on things. But Monken had a different viewpoint, and the Ravens were able to maintain a lot of the run game in a very similar way. The read option and a lot of the things they did run game wise were still created a situation where most of the offensive fuel was on misdirection. And I just, whoever's coming in has to be somehow aware of that. And I don't know who's telling them. I don't know who's going to tell them.
I think T. Martin would probably be, but he's obviously a former quarterback, but he's a quarterback's coach and he's pretty close with Lamar. So if you had to say which one guy on the offense, and you want to keep, a couple guys, you don't want a totally clean, bare cupboard. But I do think that, it's 18 years is a long time. Think about where we all were 18 years ago.
We're not disagreeing with that. My question is, who maintains the culture? You lost your tight ends coach. You're going to lose your offensive line coach because they ain't bringing him back. Both offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are gone. Pagano's gone. Horton's gone. I don't know about Mike Santucci or Double D in the secondary, whether those guys will. I always want to call him Dom DeLuise, but that's not his name. It's DeLucia or whatever his name is.
Yeah, DeLucia.
Yeah. But anyway, there certainly could be a few guys back, but how are they going to recreate we built this offense around Lamar Jackson when there's no we anymore?
I think that falls in the front office, and I think DaCosta and Ozzie really are the true identity of the team. And Harbaugh inherited and incorporated a lot of the Billick. I mean, obviously Rex Ryan helped the transition, but run the ball and play defense and that sort of thing that goes back, that predates Harbaugh. So
I
I
don't
think
think
this
that's fair to
organization,
Harbaugh at all. The whole building the offense around Lamar Jackson is completely of the Harbaugh era. It didn't have anything to do with freaking Billick.
no, not Lamar.
Yeah,
Of course not
yeah,
Lamar. That's
yeah.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying the style of football where you want to play good defense and be a smash mouth kind of team that predates Harbaugh. That's what I'm saying.
That's more
Obviously
of
not
a
Lamar.
high level identity. I'm talking about the DNA of their offense, the characteristics that make their offense run. How are they going to, the new guys are going to come in and no doubt they're going to watch some film, and that's going to be in its own right, a big thing, but they're going to then have to create a playbook. Most offensive coordinators, when they come in, they bring their own playbook and then they make adjustments to that. And Monken did a very good job of it. And part of it was he had people telling him what worked and what didn't, in addition to what he had.
Right.
But I'm not sure that
Yeah,
same. Yeah,
that's a fair question.
Yeah.
That's a fair question. I don't know where you're going to find that on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, I think you can probably make it work, especially because some of the candidates have been here before. But the offense, I agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the coaching search. We just talked a little bit about who might be back, so I don't think we need to cover that ground again. But what do the Ravens really want in terms of a head coach is one thing. What are your characteristics that you're looking for?
I thought DaCosta gave a great answer. He said leadership, holding the players accountable, and X's and O's. I think those are really the top three. Yeah. So it's hard to say without getting in the room. I think another important factor that people are overlooking are where does this coach have connection? Who does this coach have connections to?
Yeah.
Because no matter what, they're going to be on one side of the ball. So some guys might have a better resume as a defensive coordinator compared to another guy slightly better, but the second candidate as a defense coordinator has a pipeline to a great system, so they might get pumped up on the list because of that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Harbaugh, with 18 years in the league, and Belichick certainly with all his years, had wonderful connections across the league in terms of finding people. That has been one of the criticisms of Mike Tomlin, is that he didn't really build a coaching tree in the same way, grow a coaching tree like Harbaugh did. So that is, it's one of the questions. I think it's also a reason why there is value to the dynastic coach that can be here 15 to 18 years, is that you get many more connections across the league, and you can use those to fill out your coaching staff year after year. And it appears Steve Bisciotti has fairly bottomless pockets for signing high value assistant coaches.
Yeah, well, you got a complete full offset too, because Harbaugh signed 5 years, $100 million. So that whole $52 million or whatever it was comes back. I narrowed the list down to 5 guys that I think are going to be on the final, the second round of interviews, the in-person interviews, and all 5 of those I would consider dynasty style coaches.
Okay,
I'm not looking for too many. There's 2 retreads and 3 new guys, but that's where I'm looking.
So you eliminated one guy who just got interviewed recently, and I eliminated him too, effectively. I wouldn't mind having him in another role, but I understand that. So all of your guys are between like 36 and 53 years old.
Yes,
they'd at least get you through. If they stayed in their late 60s, they get you through for a 15-year period.
Yeah, and that's what I want. I'm not looking for cash in, win a Super Bowl, and then 10 years of rebuilding. I certainly don't want that. Right. Yeah, I like the method that they've used, but yeah.
Okay, we talked a little bit about the CEO head coach and the individual side head coach. I don't want to beat that to death, but if you want to hear it again, listen to part 1, and you'll hear 2 different viewpoints on this. I do slightly favor a CEO head coach, although I'm first to admit, if you have somebody so great on one side of the ball that you just need to keep them at any cost, then you go ahead and make the move for that guy. I don't think that the Ravens knew at the time that McDonald was that guy 2 years ago. Okay. He was a good defensive coach with a fairly limited resume with the Ravens through that period, but was not I don't think he was a guy they could have necessarily said, was the next great defensive mind. And they may have, they may have lost out at that point in terms of not creating a succession plan right there and then to take advantage of it.
You're not going to fire John Harbaugh off a conference championship game appearance. No chance. And I see questions directed to us about that I think we didn't address last time. It just doesn't make sense. It is what it is. There's a couple guys that kind of have connections to him in this next go round that probably could do most of what he does.
Right. And it should, the CEO style head coach, his job is to grow a tree. So you're succeeding when your guys leave and take other jobs. And then the next guys are excited about the job they get and the possibility of growth to another job. And you look at any of these coaching resumes from all around the league, they all spend 1 to 2 years in every single role they're in.
Right.
So it shouldn't surprise anybody. All right.
Do you want to talk about some specific candidates?
We can move on to that. So they've have done, by my count, they've done 10 interviews so far. And I may be wrong. They may actually be past that because I thought they were 10 before they hit this last one. So I might be missing somebody on my list. I think the one I'm missing is number 3 on the requested list here is a guy they've already talked to. Maybe even 2 and 3.
I believe they requested Shula, which I'm not sure is on there.
Shula, no, I didn't know that one. Okay.
Shula, they requested. There's been a lot of buzz about some of these really, really young guys, Davis Webb and Shielhaas, I believe it is, the Rams passing game coordinator.
They didn't talk to him yet. Did they?
I can't keep. I don't remember who they talked to and who they haven't. I just know there's 15 that they've either talked to or in the process of talking to.
All right, so let's go through the guys. One of the oldest candidates is Vance Joseph, who's the Broncos defensive coordinator, 20 years as an NFL head coach. He's 53 years old and certainly has a great resume data point with the Broncos 2025 success.
Yeah, I heard good things about him, that some of the high-powered offenses said that he was the toughest defense they played this last year. I think he'd be a good candidate for coordinator. I wouldn't be super excited about him as head coach, but if you get a young head coach on the offensive side and pair him with Joseph, I think that could be a good combination.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's exactly what I would look for as a combination there. Then we talked about Davis Webb going to the Broncos again. He's the Broncos QB coach currently. Outstanding offensive coordinator candidate. He's 31 this month. This month he'll be 31. Yeah. That is extremely young.
They said it would tie McVay for the youngest coach ever hired, something or right around there. McVay was the only one around that age range.
Huh. He might be too green for that role. What do you think? Or would you be
too
okay
green
with him as offensive coordinator?
As offensive coordinator, I'd be okay. Well, I think as an offensive coordinator underneath an offensive-minded head coach, I'd be okay. He's green, and we're in a championship winner right now with Baltimore. I'd rather not go that green.
Okay, so I don't think he would go for that. I think he would go to be a non. I think if it was Saleh or was one of the other defensive-oriented head coaches, I think he'd be fine being offensive coordinator under that. I don't think he wants to be offensive coordinator under an offensive head coach. It's terrible. If McDaniel were the head coach and he were offensive coordinator, he'd hate that.
Yeah, unless he can call plays. Yeah, I agree with you. So that interesting name, probably one of the hottest names in the next cycle or two, but probably still not ready yet.
Yeah. Clint Kubiak, 38 years old, the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator, 13 NFL seasons as a coach. He's had a lot of one-year stints in his career. Mm-hmm. Obviously got the last name that you want in the coaching search game. There's a lot of good last names, but he's one of them. Did some miracle work with Sam Darnold this year with Purdy, looking back to 2023, and making something out of him. Very interesting candidate. He would be near the top of my list in terms of guys that I would want for an OC/head seat, but I don't think he would not accept the offensive coordinator role. He'd have to be a head coach that calls plays.
He is my number one. He's at the very top of my list for head coach. I think one of the important things is Rick Dennison and Drew Forrester have followed him to every stop. If you recall, Dennison, I believe, was an assistant under Kubiak who Bisciotti and Harbaugh tried to get stay when Kubiak left, and he just followed Kubiak religiously and is now latched on with the Sun. But Forrester is one of the better offensive line coaches. And I know we both talked about that. You especially, you want to get that ace O-line coach. And also working with McDonald, you assume he has some connections to the defensive side of that staff, so maybe he could get some connections there, or you pair him with an older head coach, defensive-minded coordinator such as Schwartz, somebody like that. So he's at the top of my list. I think he's a betting favorite, if not top 1 or 2 right now.
I haven't looked at it recently. I know Jesse Minter was earlier, but Kubiak would be near the top of my list. The point you make about Forrester is an excellent one, that if you can get another lifer offensive line coach. How old is Forrester now? He's up there, right? Take a look for that while I'm going on. Okay, next candidate on the list is Kevin Stefanski. He's 43 still only. So he's been the Browns head coach for 6 years, twice the coach of the year, offensive background, 20 years total in the NFL at age 43 is impressive in and of itself. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, slightly interesting. I mean, offensive-minded coach who overachieved potentially, but he'd be 6th or 7th on my wish list at this moment.
He is either just inside or just on the list of the top 5 for me that I would have. I'm not excited about him, but I'm more excited about him. Some of the other names we're going to hit. Matt Nagy has been the Chiefs offensive coordinator for 3 years. 18 years in the NFL as a coach. Interestingly, Nagy was an Arena League player. He really never played in the NFL. He didn't absolutely never play in the NFL, but he was at camp or something, maybe with the Eagles, I think, and then he didn't make it. He played a long time in the Arena League. To me, I don't really see what he brings, but there may be something about his relationships on the Chiefs that are really worth leveraging, but he would not be in my top 5.
No, he is at the bottom barrel on my list. I think they may have brought him in as a favor to an agent potentially to try to bring him some buzz, or maybe just to do some subterfuge and say, what do you think? Whatever. Nagy's not. And apparently Forster is 64. So, yeah, he's getting a little bit older, but
it's certainly not building a dynasty head. If you brought somebody like in at that age, you'd kind of want a succession plan to be in place immediately. Yeah.
Agreed. Maybe you keep Knighton underneath him and he can learn from him or something.
Travell Wharton.
That's what I meant.
So I'm thinking of, he might not be the right guy. I really don't know. I mean, it bothers me that he was not promoted when Joe D had his health issues.
Yes,
it would have been a natural, chance to do that, but then they decided not to. So
that's what you want in a business. You want to have a great guy teaching the underling who's eventually going to take over for him. That's right. It's exactly what you want.
Yep, absolutely. And you don't worry too much when the underling leaves for another role, because you want to have guys who are great at training underlings.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, next guy on the list is Cliff Kingsbury, 46 years old. Offensive coordinator for the Commanders from 24-25. So the Jaden Daniels emergence is the big ticket item on his list. He's got only 6 years of coaching in the NFL, which surprised me, but he did coach Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. So he's got that on his resume. He was a few days ago, he's one of the favorites according to Kalshi, but I don't know where he stands right now on this. He would be on my top 5
for head coach.
Yep.
All right. Bold, Ken. I like that. I could see it. I think I would prefer him as an offensive coordinator, but I think you can see some of the things he did with Jaden Daniels his rookie year and how that you transpose those onto Lamar. I'm going to have to take another look at him, considering that you're higher on him than I am.
Okay. Well, we'll see, because we each get 5 here. So, the next one, Anthony Weaver, is 45 years old. Interior defender as a player, is a 3 and 5 tech. Assistant head coach with the Ravens. All of his time basically is on the defensive side of the ball. He hasn't spent any time otherwise. The thing that's very striking about Anthony Weaver is his leadership qualities just burst off the field when he's at the podium, when he's teaching defensive line play, whatever it is. I actually think he's probably the top CEO candidate of the group, unless I
Mm-hmm.
could, because I'm not 100% sure I can trust Saleh in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I'd agree. He's a top CEO candidate. You want somebody when the going's getting tough and they look over to the sideline and they kind of get some confidence looking at the head coach. And I think he would give you that. Now, a couple thoughts on Weaver. He was passed up for Orr, and he's just not known as a great X's and O's guy. So that's probably his biggest knock on him. There is a report just before we started recording from Connor Hughes that John Harbaugh is interested in him becoming his defense coordinator with the Giants. Here's one more consideration I'll give you, and this applies to both Anthony Weaver and Jesse Minter. John Harbaugh is in the process of trying to fill out an entire staff. Jim Harbaugh is looking to replace his offensive coordinator and possibly some offensive assistants. I don't know if you want to hire a guy that's going to be competing with them in the same pool. If that makes sense.
I don't have a problem hiring that. That means you won in the competition. If you're having trouble hiring him because there's a lot of competition over money, I don't even care then, because it's Steve Bisciotti money. It's not cap money.
No. What I'm saying is, let's say Jesse Minter gets the head coaching job and Jim Harbaugh takes his first choice for offensive coordinator, and John Harbaugh takes his first choice for wide receiver coach, because they're now all competing within the Harbaugh pool.
No, that does make a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Okay. So I'll buy that. I mean, he's got other experience with his time in Miami. I'm not saying he's got a big coaching tree or anything, but that would be an additional burden. I will say this. Bisciotti actually mentioned that Weaver's interview he thought had gone very well from the duration of it, that he was in the building. I think Weaver might have done it in person, or maybe it was done over Zoom, but whatever the case was, with the preliminary interview, that had gone very well based on the duration. And that's true, by the way. Anytime you're hiring somebody and they stay for 8 hours, they stay for the whole day, and you go out for drinks with them afterwards instead of getting them back to the airport around noon, that's a very good sign.
Well, what did you make of Bisciotti's comments about make sure Eric's handicapping the guys that have been here? Yeah. So that's kind of like
it was the yin and the yang. And that was the other side of it, is he said, I hope Eric has the filter necessary to detect when Anthony Weaver's, specifically the one he's talking about, his interview is a performance, because he knows what the Ravens want to hear in those interviews. So very valid point. And I personally, I don't think there's anything I've seen on the field from Weaver that would lead me to believe he's anything but an outstanding leader. I mean, I thought that, and if maybe the trick would be to somehow get Weaver to be the defensive coordinator here instead of being the head coach. I don't know if that could happen, but maybe with the right OC, he would be the DC, and think of Baltimore as a step up.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a combination. I look at it as these three pieces: head coach, offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, and you need to find the qualities that to meet the criteria. It's combination between the three of them. But if the head coach isn't the best leader, then you prop up the defensive coordinator, who's a really good leader, to kind of level out the weakness there.
Okay. By the way, Weaver would be in my final five.
He would probably be 8th on my list.
Okay.
Because of the X's and O's.
All right. I haven't seen that evidence yet, but it's possible that's a legitimate thing. I think accountability, I don't think that'd be a problem at all with a person.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Go to the next list is Jesse Minter, the Dolphins defensive coordinator. 4 years prior, working with the DBs with the Ravens. He replaced Mike McDonald as the defensive coordinator at Michigan. So he basically did the same 2-year internship there that McDonald did. McDonald's might have only been a 1-year internship. He was very recently either the first or second betting favorite. He was at 31%. I know on Kalshi's it was down to 22% last I saw. We could check that again before the end of the show here. Maybe I'll do that when Voss makes his comments about him. But he would require a strong offensive coordinator. I think this is an important point. I think the Ravens are going to have an easier time finding a defensive coordinator or a defensive-minded head coach who can find a good offensive coordinator, because I think the Ravens have the golden ticket with Lamar Jackson in terms of an offensive coordinator that can hire even guys that they would only get as a head coach otherwise.
I think that's a good point. Lamar's certainly a draw. I would be concerned about a defensive coach that hires a hotshot OC who leaves after 1 year, like Kubiak. I still have some scar tissue from that Gary Kubiak year. But Minter, he is second on my list. I believe he's the second in betting favorites. She'll get back to that in a minute. I'm encouraged that he is a more pass defense minded. Go ahead, Ken. You're muted. You're muted. Muted.
Sorry, thank you. I've got Minter at 43% currently on Kalshi, way up today, with Flores at 12 and Sala at 12 being the next two. So the Cliff Kingsbury love has gone away.
Or Kubiak.
And the Kubiak love is not there. There are more markets. Here we go. Sala is fourth. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Who else we got? Yeah, Sala is fourth at 12%. Kingsbury 10%. Tomlin 9%. That's a sucker bet. Clint Kubiak 8%. Mike McDonald 8%. Chris Shula 4%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So Minter, I'm encouraged that he is more of he emphasizes pass defense as much or more than run defense, which I think was a flaw of Zach Orr, secondary coach formerly for the Ravens. He's probably the closest you're going to find to Mike McDonald. I would again mention that you'd be competing with the Harbaughs in the talent pool. So that's a little bit of a knock.
Every day, companies you've never heard of are making millions off your personal data. Your name, address, phone number, even details about your family are pulled from public records on the internet, then sold without your consent. There's an entire marketplace built on your privacy, and most people have no idea it exists. Aura fights back. Aura removes your personal data from broker sites and keeps it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just a data broker removal system. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your online life. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager for safer logins, and spam call protection to shut down scammers. Aura scans the dark web for your most sensitive information and notifies you instantly if anything is exposed. And if your identity is ever stolen, you're backed by up to $5 billion in insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other service charges about the same, but only cover one or two areas. Aura gives you everything: data broker removal, identity and credit monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all in one simple app. Aura removes what's already exposed, protects what's not, and puts you back in control. Go to aura.com/remove for complete digital protection and peace of mind. That's aura.com/remove.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to Mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
But Kubiak's my number one, Minter's my number two.
Okay. Minter's on my final five for sure. The next one, very controversial guy, Brian Flores, 44 years old, former Dolphins head coach, now the Vikings defensive coordinator. He brought the Dolphins back after a terrible 2019. The Ravens started the season there. He called a late timeout in that game that I thought was just ridiculous. And down 59-10, he wanted to give his team another chance to get the ball, he said. Indefensible. Absolutely indefensible. But he dramatically improved the Minnesota defense while he's there, and the Dolphins had a couple good comeback years in his last 2 years there. But he's got an outstanding lawsuit against the NFL and lots of past questions about his communication skills.
Yeah, that's the real big red flag to me. Jeff Zarebex reported that he's had a lot of issues. It seemed like a very odd situation in Miami. So I don't know the details. I don't want to cast judgment on the gentleman. It's a very good defensive head coach at some point. Is cover zero blitzing that innovative? I'm not quite sure. So is that you want to pin your whole franchise on cover zero blitz? I'm not quite sure about that. I'd be very intrigued by him as a defensive coordinator, but he would not be in my top 5 as far as head coach candidates at this moment.
I'm at the same point there. So I think he is a guy who could be brought in as DC, and I don't think he leaves the Vikings for that to come to the Ravens. Would just be my feeling. They had an interview today, and I might have left some people out, but Jim Schwartz had a preliminary, age 59, the Browns DC. He's by far the oldest candidate in the group. Obviously, that reduces or eliminates the chance for a dynasty hire. But he is from Baltimore. I think we went to either Calvert Hall or Mount St. Joe's. I don't remember which.
St. Joe's. He's from Arbutus.
Okay. And he's experiences on the defensive side of the ball. He had that 5-year head coaching gig with the Lions. Some funny things happened there on the sideline with the challenge flag. You may remember on Thanksgiving Day game.
I remember there was a dust up with him and Jim, handshake after a game one time. I've always liked Jim Schwartz. He is very aggressive. He's in the Flores mold. He obviously coordinated an excellent defense in Cleveland this last year. We also should consider the circumstance that he had the defensive player of the year and a lot of talented players there. I'm in the same boat on Schwartz as I am Flores. Great defensive coordinator option. Not in my top 5 for head coach.
Okay, same place with me. We've got 2 other guys who I think have had interviews, but I'm not 100% sure. Mike McDaniel, 42 years old, former Dolphins head coach.
Today.
He had his today.
I saw a picture of him getting on the airplane or something.
Okay, because the Ravens didn't post his picture yet on Twitter. At least they hadn't when this show started. So I'll have to go back for that. But anyway, that's good that he's actually been included in this. He's certainly one of the top candidates. So he might not just take an offensive coordinator role, but he did also say that he would consider a great offensive coordinator job. And as soon as he said that, there's only one job that makes sense for. There's only one job that makes sense for, and that's in Baltimore. So he's basically signaling the Ravens, I'll take your OC job if you find a defensive-minded head coach.
So there's been some growing sentiment for McDaniel in some parts of the fan base that I've seen. I know our friend Garnett likes him a lot. He has a killer instinct. He hung 70 on Denver 2 years ago, I think. He's a really good offensive mastermind. I think another important point to make is his team didn't quit on him this year. They rattled off a bunch of wins after the trade deadline, after they had traded away some players. And he didn't have a lot to work with Tua. So I didn't like him much at first, but actually he just makes it. I guess you took Kingsbury as maybe your wild card. He might be my wild card but you got to pair him with him paired with a Weaver. Like that would be a really good combination. They already work together, obviously. So,
but I'd go the other way on it. I'd have him as the offensive coordinator, and
Weaver. Well, then he's gone though. But then he's gone after a year, right? McDaniel. If he does what you want him to do, he's going after a year. So that's why I would do it the other way.
I hear you. I'm generally here. Here's my problem. I'm generally okay when coordinators are great and they move on. If you have a coordinator who's just so darn great that you have to keep him, then you probably want to make special considerations. Mike McDaniel's not that guy for me. I think he had too many what I'll call maturity issues as a head coach at the podium that I wasn't real fond of. I mean, he has he's kind of, it seems like if you got a group of NFL head coaches together, he'd be the one that would get teased.
Yeah, he's Metro. He's Metro.
Yeah. So anyway, I would be okay if he ended up being a Kubiak thing where he was there for a year. Wouldn't be the end of the world for me. And the risk is that he takes some of the underling coaches with him, which would be bad. But
I would hope that the next round of head coach, offense coordinator, defense coordinator, you get a few years of them together to maximize this opportunity with Lamar. But that's a pretty big consideration for me.
It's also a pretty big ask. So you started by saying, and these two things are in the opposite direction, by the way, that you don't really care about a dynasty head coach, because even though most of your guys were young, because you want to win Super Bowls now, but you also
No, I didn't say that. I thought Steve said that.
Okay. Well, I've ascribed a lot of what Steve said to you then clearly, but the other possibility is that you win a Super Bowl and then your coordinators are going to be in demand no matter what. I mean, so I'm not concerned about that from that perspective. Am I concerned that Mike McDaniel would have a good year with the Ravens that takes them just far enough and then they don't get, I can't be concerned about that either because I want that growth and I don't want them to say, well, wait a minute, you better stay at 8 and 9 because if you're not going to win the Super Bowl from here, it's a zero.
No, I think that's the reason to go offensive head coach, young offensive head coach, older defensive coordinator, because those guys aren't going to necessarily get poached after you win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
That would be like a Spagnuolo type of situation.
Okay.
You know, you win the Super Bowl.
Schwartz if you wanted for that.
Exactly. Schwartz. I don't think he'd necessarily get poached just because he won a Super Bowl. So it's a consideration. Maybe not a huge consideration, but it should be taken into account.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. I understand the background at least. Okay. The next guy on the list is Robert Saleh, who will be 47 this month, the 49ers DC, previous head coach of the Jets. Didn't have a great record with them, 20-36 in 3.5 seasons. And I heard this from you, but I think it is true that he gave up his play calling on defense, at least in that 4th season, but it might've been in the 3rd season.
I don't recall, and I thought I heard that from you. So maybe we're both pointing the finger at each other. But
yeah,
just Saleh, I think he's in the leader of men category, along with Weaver, but he also has schemed up. I mean, look what he's done with San Francisco. They have Bosa's out, Warner's out. I mean, they're bare bones on defense, and they're playing well. He does have head coaching experience. My concern would be how great are his connections on the offensive side of the ball. He hired Mike LaFleur last with the Jets. He flamed out. He didn't last. I don't think he lasted the whole tenure. Obviously, there's questions with Matt LaFleur's ability at this point after last weekend. So he does have some connections to the Shanahan-McVay tree. So anyway, long story short, I've been back and forth. He's a little too rah-rah for my personal taste, but that obviously shouldn't disqualify him. So he is probably 4th on my list at this point. And
so
I think
you have him on the finalist, right?
On the top 5. And I think he might be the happy marriage between kind of all considerations.
So if Saleh McDaniel as OC, Saleh head coach McDaniel OC, anybody DC, you'd be thrilled with.
How about that for sure?
And I bet I could come up with a specific ring, but I think Weaver as DC, Saleh as head coach. That'll never happen, but I would love to have that, and McDaniel as the OC.
McDaniel or Kingsbury. I mean, if that's a possibility.
Okay.
I just concerned about losing the offense coordinator quick. If he already has head coaching experience and has a good year with Lamar.
Okay. All right. And we're both in agreement. You can't get Clint Kubiak with any less than a head coaching role. So
to play that other scenario out, let's say Kubiak gets the head coach job. He brings in his brother, which I believe his name is Clay, to be the offensive coordinator. And then they get a Schwartz as a defensive coordinator or somebody else he picks up from the McDonald tree. And then they win the Super Bowl. And then Clay Kubiak, the offensive coordinator, leaves because he's the hotshot offense coordinator. You still have Clint there to oversee game planning of the offense.
Right.
So that would be where I stand. I did have one more candidate in my top 5 who I don't think they've interviewed yet, unless you wanted to.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it's Shula. Chris Shula. He did not have a great game last week, but he's done more with less with that Rams defense than really anybody. The least cap money spent. Only 1 first-round pick, Jared Verse. I was corrected. They got your guy from the Commanders, the skinny Emmanuel Forbes.
Yeah,
and he's the 2nd first-round pick, but they didn't draft him, so I don't know how much you want to credit that.
Reclamation projects. That was good.
Yep. So what's intriguing about him is that he's a good schemer, deceptive coverage, that sort of thing, but he also has the pipeline into those offensive guys that are really doing well in the NFC right now.
Okay. I would not have a problem with that at all. He's very young, but another guy who would be an exciting choice, and certainly I'd like to hear about. Joe Brady, any interest in him?
I mean, I was somewhat interested in him, but the more I watch him play, it's just Josh Allen hero ball, and I don't want that for Lamar.
Yeah.
I think the scheme is the same scheme, but he's not scheming guys open like a lot of these other guys are to make things easier for Allen, and I want somebody that makes it easier on Lamar than harder.
If you're interested in McDaniel as an offensive coordinator, but you're not interested in him as a head coach, do you include him in your head coaching interviews surreptitiously to keep him interested in the thing, and then offer him the OC job?
Absolutely. I like playing defense as much as you can.
All right. I got a few mailbag questions. I want to get to those if we can.
Please.
Interesting one from Eric Clark, which is one of the first few actually thoughtful, like, trade for Max Crosby things I've ever seen. So we trade for Max Crosby as a regular thing. First and 2 firsts and a third, or 2 firsts and a third, and they give us a 5th back. I always love how people can fine tune it to this degree when they're off by orders of magnitude in terms of where the radio station is. But then they fine tune it with, we got a 5th back in 2027. Well, that changes everything. So, yeah. But anyway, Eric's got a fairly thoughtful one. He said, I would trade number 14 this year, a 2026 third, and a 2027 second for Max, and pick number 36 this year. Would Las Vegas, and would you? Okay, so I before you answer, and I'll get the same information I had, I looked at the relative value of the 2 picks. It's 1,100 and JJ points to 540. You can use another scale if you want to for the picks that would be exchanged this year. Then they would get additionally something that I would call worth 80% of a pick that is worth about 155 next year.
That's the 27 second rounder.
That's a 26 third rounder.
Oh, okay.
And so that has about value about 120 incrementally. And I'm using 80%, 60% for the pick that's 2 years out, which is worth about 390 base. So I say it's worth about 230 after you discount it. Okay. And again, this is assuming the Ravens getting into the playoffs and having the worst record of any playoff team. So they would be drafting last among qualifiers. Okay. And that gets me to 1,450 total versus 540 that the Ravens are getting back, which is 910. And if I look at the draft tech chart, it would be effectively like trading the 18th overall pick in exchange for Max Crosby right now. Okay. Now, first of all, that doesn't seem ridiculous. So it's one of the first ones that I've seen that is kind of on the border of reason, but let's, and so you could change that and just trade him the 14th pick this year. And then get some return, I would hope.
And get,
because that's a significant amount of JJ points that you
that's true. Back. 4 points and 4 picks in the first.
Yeah. But if I OTC Max Crosby's contract, here's where the problem came in. The Raiders didn't pay him a gigantic signing bonus. They pay him large base salary numbers. So his base salaries for 26 through 29, 4 years he signed for, he's $30 million guaranteed this year, then $29 million next year, 26.5 and 27.4 in the remaining years. That's an enormous commitment of salary. Now, admittedly, the Ravens can get out of it after any year of those 4. So it's a series of 1-year options on Max Crosby that the Ravens would have. Of course,
is it a true option where they'd be able to recoup a comp pick, or was it?
No, it's not that. No, it's an option to cut. So they have 29,782 in savings next year because he's got a per game roster bonus as well, and 27.3 million the year after, and 28.2 million the year after that. But no, they wouldn't get a comp pick if they cut him any of those years.
So when I first saw this question, I thought it was rich, more rich, and I would have said I'd do it if the Ravens could keep the 27 second rounder. So you'd give them the 14th and the third rounder for the early second and Crosby. It's the whole concept of you don't want to trade for a player and then pay them because it's like a 2 for 1 or a 3 for 1. Yeah. And you hope that the first, second, third round picks the next several years are all, core players, key guys, especially if you're picking in the middle of the third round, not the very end of the third round too. But the more now you say that there, after you did the math, it's not quite as rich as I thought. I still think I'd rather hold on to the 14th pick. And there's an edge rusher out of Auburn named Keldrick Falk, who might be in that range. And maybe you can keep Draymond Jones, re-up Draymond Jones, draft Keldrick Falk there, and now you got a really good 4 outside backers for the next
develop Mike
years.
Green.
Green, and you still have Tavius, and you got 4 quality guys all on a contract for several years. That might be a better option.
Yeah, I like that better too. I think I've also got to point out that Max Crosby is 28 years and 146 days old. So he's basically 28 and a half. He'll be 29 when the season starts next August. 29 is not young for a football player, folks. That is late middle age. And when he goes into, as he ages through this next contract, it probably will not be pretty. And I look at a contract to give it to someone that age is you should expect 1 top shelf year of production out of that player, 2 middling years where his production either drops off or it isn't what he expected, maybe due to a minor injury, and 1 where he loses a year entirely. And if you're really looking at that, and that's what I said about Elvis Dumervil, by the way, and it's almost exactly what happened with him in terms of his time with the Ravens. I'm not that excited about it. It's hard to get excited about a lot of free agents in that world.
Yeah, I just think the whole concept of the trade, it's the double whammy. It's the double whammy, like we've said so many times. And if you really want to spend up on a pass rusher, go out and sign Jalen Phillips and pay him the same number and keep your draft picks. To me, that's the obvious alternative.
Right. Now that's a great point. And I think Jalen Phillips is younger too. So we'd have both those. He's not
24, I think, 25, I think. He's young.
All right, let's move on. Raven Rick, what are your thoughts on Bisciotti's less involved role in running the team and coaching search? I think we both commented on this. I'm extremely positive on the hands-off nature of Steve Bisciotti. I think we're extremely lucky to have him. Voss, anything more to add that we haven't talked about already?
No, I just think it's really smart to let the guys that are operating day-to-day have a large hand in the decision-making process because they're the ones with the boots on the ground.
Raven Rick, if you want to hear the other side of that coin, go talk to a Cowboys fan and just see just how upset they are about how badly it sucks to have Jerry Jones, in their football operations with his hand in the soup every day.
Mm-hmm.
Got another one from As Cheese Marlowe Cheese Marlowe. Sorry about this. Also, I'll probably save this for Friday Morning GM, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Starks' season. According to PFF, Starks allowed 26 receptions in 17 games, yet he played the most coverage snaps of any safety in the entire league. Okay, I've got some thoughts on this, and I'll tell you that Starks was near the bottom of free safeties, and I separated them out because people had made the comment that strong safeties, guys who play closer to the line of scrimmage, tend to have lower yards per target against. And it's not untrue, but Starks is among the worst of players in terms of yards per target allowed. And it's surprising. A lot of the free safety group, which started this year, Andrew McKusick was dead last at 14 yards per target. And also down there, Watts, who's had a good season for interceptions, was 10 or 11 yards per target. So, I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying that you better have something that offsets a bad yards per target number. Starks is a pretty good tackler. He did the job there. He had a couple interceptions, but I'd say he's come in at a 55 or 60%, 55th or 60th percentile of what I would have expected from his rookie season. So that's probably the best way I can put it. I looked at my expectations episodes to kind of place him in that graph.
That's fair. I think that's fair. I know for just looking at PFF, he was down by the bottom around midseason, and he made a good a jump up the chart, and he finished, I want to say, like 33rd or 35th among all safeties, which is pretty solid. I think I would give it his rookie year a solid B. People, I think, sometimes overrate the impact of rookies and what they're going to do. I thought he kept a lid on his assignment for the most part, and I'd definitely like to see more reception and ball taking production next year.
When people say they give somebody a B, I really want to know how they divide their grades up among the 5 possibilities. So are they doing it like Harvard, where? Okay, to explain briefly, Harvard and the rest of the Ivy League are broadly criticized for churning out a bajillion A's in their classes. The flip side of that is they brought these people in who were the best of the best at all their schools, and they've worked hard their whole lives to get there, and they're under incredible stress at Harvard to get good grades, and particularly, they want to get into law school or med school or whatever it might be. I mean, and so they say it's unfair to make us work that much harder to compete with a group of people who there should be more A's in there. But on the other side of this, I want to know in the NFL, how do you grade these players? I mean, it's ruthlessly competitive. And when I'm grading offensive line guys, I have about the same number of B's as D's. And I'm going to have a high peaking of C's in that group.
That's how it should be. I just think free safety is somewhat of a hard position to get the grasp of, because when we saw in 2000, what was the year that Earl Thomas had a good year? 18 or 19?
Yeah.
19. All of a sudden, tight end production disappeared, and no one was throwing to the middle of the field, and he wasn't getting great stats, but he made a big impact on that season. The year before, I think the Ravens were 32nd or 31st against tight ends. The year after, they were 31st, 32nd against tight ends. They were top 5 against tight ends that year, in large part due to Earl Thomas, even though he didn't have gaudy stats, just because free safeties have a kind of a intangible impact. So that's why I would say it's a little bit tougher position to evaluate than trench play, so to speak.
That's fair. And I think that the Ravens inside linebackers, their stats should have suffered if Starks was a real liability, and they didn't. They had good coverage years. So from that perspective, I'd say, that's a feather in Starks' cap that I probably didn't give him enough credit for. Let's move on to the next question. Alvindo Royale says, I think what made Harbaugh a good CEO type coach was his ability to find and develop coaches through his network. Any evidence that Weaver would have that ability?
I think it's a concern. I don't see any evidence necessarily. If you're a good leader of players, you should be a good leader of coaches. Just to translate that way. We just don't have a lot of evidence, I don't think, because he hasn't been a player that's developed, to my knowledge, a coordinator among his defensive assistants, I guess, besides Zach Orr, and he's never had the head coaching opportunity. So you can't really develop a tree from a coordinator spot.
So he's worked with a lot of teams. So just in the pros, he was with the Jets as a defensive coach in 2012, with the Bills in 13, with the Browns for 2 years from 14 to 15, with the Texans from 16 to 19, with the Ravens for 3 years from 21 to 23, and then with the Dolphins. That at least is a lot of exposure to individual coaches that are probably, a lot of them still around the league from the last 13 years. I think a lot of them would still be around the league. Now, some of them at the bottom end of some of those teams, and some of those teams have been at the bottom defensively, there would have been a good chance that a lot of those coaches are now out of the league in terms of where they're doing. They're probably coaching in college or something. So at least the exposure component meets my minimum standard. Does he really have the contacts who want to work for him? I have no idea. I really have no idea.
I think Steve made a great point at the press conference, and I've kind of alluded to it. If you can get a college pipeline for assistants, that would be tremendous. What college assistant coach wants to deal with unlimited transfers and the NIL, and every single player on the roster is a free agent every single year? I mean, it's insane. What I made the comment the other day. College football expanded playoff is great. NIL is great. Transfer rule is bad for the sport. It really is. There's no continuity, and you can take a guy that's maybe a coordinator at the college level and make him your defensive line coach at the pro level, and I think a lot of guys would jump at that.
I don't know how the NIL works with a completely handcuffed transfer portal. Because part of the whole thing of NIL is you're able to negotiate for your.
Just give them one transfer then. Give them one transfer. They don't need to be able to transfer every single year. That's
okay. So they have to use it judiciously before they get. It's still gonna.
Or you have to sit out a year. If you take more than one, you have to sit out a year.
That used to be the rule. That used to be the rule. Yeah. All right, Vas. Always a pleasure doing this show with you. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Pleasure's all mine, Ken. I am on Twitter X at Vasilis Fiamata, VASILISFIAMATA.
All right. Other folks out there, thanks so much for listening. As always, if you want to do the show a solid, write us a 5-star 50-word review out there. We really appreciate that. Like and subscribe if you're watching YouTube videos, in particular some of the 1 to 3 minute videos. That'd be very nice to try and cross-pollinate and get the thing out to more people. And as always, tell that one new person about this particular program and why you like it. For Vas Laricos, this is Ken McKusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Friday Morning GM.